Hey, so today I'm going to be talking about some of what I experienced when my dad passed away. Coming up on a year now, my father passed away of metastatic melanoma. He had had a skin cancer scare back in 2018, 7 years before the diagnosis that would take his life. At the time, we didn't understand the severity of that instance. My mother, myself, and my brother were shielded from the reality of what my dad faced. Though looking back now, I understand how serious that instance was and how it was life-altering for my father. With the knowledge I have now, I understand that those last 7 years were a gift, and honestly, I wish I had known back then so I could have done things differently, but that's not how things went. I'm just grateful for the time I did get to have with my dad. The 5 to 6 month period where my dad was sick felt like being in a sort of limbo. We were all just trying to carry on like normal while waiting on doctors to decide on a treatment plan. We did pursue treatment, which consisted of medications and radiation sessions and planned immunotherapy that didn't end up happening. Even though deep down we were aware of how bad the circumstances were, my dad wanted to fight. There were a lot of complex feelings coming from all sides during this time. There was anger, frustration, sadness, fear. Honestly, I think I started the grieving process before my dad actually passed away, like I was preparing for the worst. It was a lot to keep up with emotionally, so I sort of tried to hide away from it. It was so much change so quickly. First, it was waiting to hear about and decide on treatment. Then it was back and forth to the treatment facility, and then it was just a steady decline in my father's condition, until finally he ended up in palliative care. Actually, the event which brought him into palliative care was because of his own condition along with my own. A few days before, I'd started to have feelings of impending doom along with paranoid thoughts of my own death. I also felt like I was in a constant state of deja vu. I ended up having prolonged back-to-back panic attacks for the first time in my life, where my heart wouldn't stop racing and I was throwing up every few minutes. I had convinced myself that I was sick and dying, which ironically worried me sick. So my mom, along with a good family friend, took my dad and I both into the emergency room where I received treatment and medication for my panic attacks and where my dad was admitted into palliative care. At least one of us stayed every night while my dad was in palliative. I stayed that first night. Most nights and every day, we were all there for about 2 weeks. I was still convinced that I too was sick and dying, or that I would soon get sick and be dying similarly to my father, but I had medication that helped me get through, and one of the doctors who worked on the floor actually checked me out and got me an appointment with a dermatologist to further put my mind at ease. She was a great doctor. That appointment was so helpful. It really was what I needed to put my fears to rest, and I'm so extremely grateful for that doctor's understanding. Because I had been so convinced of my own impending doom, I really thought that my death was imminent. It was like I thought that I was somehow mirroring my father. It was really confusing to be having such thoughts about myself when he was the one actually going through it. I felt guilty and selfish for having such thoughts, but it was something I couldn't control. I think it was actually part of my coping. Losing his life felt like losing my own. My dad was the person I loved most in this world, and it all came on so quickly. This wasn't my first experience with loss. 2 years before my father died, my 2 uncles and aunt had passed away within a year of each other, and my experience with their deaths had taught me a lot. Although the grief of my father was on a whole other level, this grief came with immense anxiety and fear. I already had depression and generalized anxiety, but this was my first experience with such intense feelings of doom, paranoia, and panic. This loss meant great change I had no control over. This grief came with almost constant anxiety, especially at night, and there was no comfort to be found. Nowadays, I'm keeping up with my antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications. I no longer have panicky feelings or paranoia surrounding death, but I do still have anxious feelings every day, in excess at night, and it isn't easy. Loss is change, and change can be scary, especially when it's outside of your control. I'm scared and anxious almost every day. I have no idea where my life is going, and I miss my dad. He was the one person I felt safe with. It's coming up on the 1-year anniversary of his death, and I have no idea how I'm going to handle that. One thing I try to remember is that grief is the love lost. All these feelings, all this grief is proof of how much I loved my dad and how much he loved me. So for now, I'm just coping as well as I can, taking it one day at a time. I just wanted to make this video to talk a little bit about grief and loss and the anxiety and paranoia I felt while facing my father's death. Maybe someone out there can relate to what I went through and feel less alone. So yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.